Welcome to the Explainer. So look, we're completely skipping the usual intro stuff today because we need to jump straight into why the fundamental math of startup survival has basically flatlined this year. Simply put, the cost of acquiring a customer, your CAC, is totally out of control. If you're building a business right now, the growth playbook you might have used even just 2 short years ago, yeah, it's highly likely it's actually accelerating your failure rather than preventing it.
$1,200. Seriously, let that number just sink in for a second. That is now the median cost to acquire a single B2B SaaS customer in 2026. We are talking about a staggering 60% increase in acquisition costs over just a 5-year window. That literally means every single time a new user signs up, a massive chunk of capital just vanishes from your balance sheet, well before that customer has even experienced the core value of your product.
Section 1. The 2026 CAC Crisis, when growth costs too much. Okay, so the central problem tearing through the tech industry right now comes down to your payback period. You know, the golden rule we all used to live by was a fast CAC payback of under 12 months. You spend the money to get a customer, and within a year, boom, they've paid you back in full. Everything after that is just profit, right? Well, today, you're waiting up to a year and a half just to recover the initial cost of a single new customer. You're effectively floating a loan to your customers while aggressively burning through your own runway. It's a brutal waiting game, and frankly, most startups simply don't have the cash reserves to survive it.
Section 2. Why the math broke. The input costs are surging.
So what's actually driving this madness? Well, the cost of just getting noticed has completely skyrocketed. Google Ads costs are up 164%. LinkedIn ads are up 89%. The digital real estate you need to stand out is just incredibly crowded and expensive now. And hey, it's not just the ad platforms. The time it takes to actually close a deal has stretched out to an agonizing average of 134 days. Buyers are hesitant. But honestly, the scariest reality is that companies are now spending $2 to generate just $1 in new annual recurring revenue. That is the literal definition of building a business on quicksand. You absolutely cannot outgrow bad unit economics.
Which brings us to Section 3. Death of the hypergrowth era. Smart growth replaces growth at all costs.
Because that quicksand we just talked about, that whole growth at all costs era, yeah, it's officially dead. Gone forever. If we look at the new normal, the median ARR growth rate across all SaaS companies has settled at 26%. That is a massive paradigm shift, a really far cry from the 60 to 80% sprints we saw during the boom years. But the top quartile, they're still hitting 50% plus, but they're doing it with incredible, deliberate efficiency. Sustainable efficiency is absolutely the new gold standard. It's not about how fast you run anymore, it's entirely about how efficiently you burn your fuel while doing it.
And this brings us right to the Rule of 40. Now, this is a financial principle stating that a software company's combined growth rate and profit margin should exceed 40% to be considered healthy. You know, it used to be just a nice-to-have benchmark, kind of a feather in your cap if you could hit it. But today, this metric is the absolute investor scorecard. It's completely replaced the blind pursuit of raw, inefficient hypergrowth. Think about it. If you're growing at 30%, but you're burning 20% to make it happen, your score is 10. You are failing the test, and capital markets will totally freeze you out. Section 4. Net revenue retention is king, the ultimate survival toolkit.
Okay, so if bagging new customers is prohibitively expensive, what's the game plan? You double down on the customers you already have. Net revenue retention, or NRR, is basically the percentage of recurring revenue you keep from your existing customers over time, and that factors in upgrades, downgrades, and churn. In 2026, NRR is universally considered the single most critical metric for your survival. It's the ultimate reality check that tells you and your investors if your product is actually delivering ongoing value or if you're just trying to fill a leaky bucket.
And the paradigm shift here is just wild. Right now, up to 45% of all new revenue is coming directly from existing customers. For companies pulling in over $50 million in revenue, it's actually over half. This proves, without a doubt, that expansion is the cheapest, most reliable growth engine available to you right now. You don't have to pay Google or LinkedIn some crazy premium to acquire an existing customer. The trust is already there. You just have to build a product that they organically want to use more of.
To optimize for that kind of expansion, pricing models are going through a total overhaul. Traditional per-seat pricing, it's completely collapsing, dropping to just 15% of the SaaS market. And the reason makes perfect sense. Per-seat pricing actively punishes your customers' growth. When every single new hire adds a line item to their invoice, CFOs start heavily scrutinizing and cutting seats. The smartest founders out there recognize this huge friction point and are aggressively pivoting to usage-based models that align perfectly with customer outcomes. This naturally boosts NRR because the customer only pays more when they're actually extracting more value.
Section 5. AI and the solopreneur shift, the SaaS apocalypse.
Now, it isn't just the financial math that's shifting. The actual technological landscape is radically changing right underneath our feet. There's a sentiment echoing out of Y Combinator right now calling it the SaaS apocalypse, which is what happens when a tiny 5-person startup can completely outbuild a legacy SaaS vendor on specific workflows. Over 60% of YC's recent batch consists of these highly efficient AI companies that are just dismantling bloated legacy product roadmaps. We're talking about small, ultra-lean teams without the heavy overhead of traditional tech companies, and they are absolutely changing the game.
How on earth are they doing it? Through a really wild phenomenon known as vibe coding. A founder essentially describes their app idea in plain, everyday natural language. Then the AI steps in and instantly generates the code, the user interface, and the backend logic in seconds. Boom, the founder launches a minimum viable product instantly, no massive engineering team required. This workflow is so seamless that it's allowing millions of solopreneurs worldwide to rapidly build, iterate, and deploy products at a fraction of what it used to cost. Legacy companies literally cannot move fast enough to compete with that kind of agility.
Section 6. The rise of venture debt, bypassing compressed equity.
So with equity so compressed and traditional scaling becoming way too expensive, how are high-growth startups actually surviving the capital crunch? The scale of this shift is pretty staggering. We hit a massive $68.8 billion record high in venture debt in 2025. What used to be seen as just a short-term bridge loan for companies frantically trying to make it to their next funding round has fundamentally evolved. It's now a permanent, highly strategic capital planning tool. Debt isn't a dirty word in the startup ecosystem anymore. For sure, it's a vital lifeline.
And the reason for this pivot is incredibly straightforward. Equity financing right now is brutally dilutive. You're dealing with compressed valuations across the board, and you end up losing control of the very company you built. Venture debt, on the other hand, is non-dilutive. It extends your operational runway and preserves your founder ownership through the hardest phases of growth. But, hey, there is a catch, and it's a huge one. To service that debt, you absolutely must have strong, predictable unit economics, which of course brings us full circle right back to that CAC and NRR math we kicked off with.
So this entire explainer really leaves us with one unavoidable, highly provocative question. Is your business built for growth at all costs, or is it actually built for survival? Look, in 2026, if you are bleeding cash to acquire expensive customers who just don't stick around, the market is not going to save you. It's time to take a hard, honest look at your unit economics, leverage these incredible AI tools at your disposal to lean out your operations, and build a growth engine that actually retains the value it creates. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer.